Well, let's stay with discussing some of the big books over the past few weeks here on Weekend Wake Up. If you just joined us, grab a quick cup of coffee. It's going to be Khayelihle Khumalo, my colleague who joins me on the show now to talk about this. I didn't realize you're quite the bookworm that my producers have now said you are. First of all, congratulations on the Mandela haircut. We ran the story. I tried. I don't know if you can tell. I tried.
Well, I can see a line is emerging there.
Well, that's just rude. It's not the same kind of line. So, Khayelihle, you've been looking at a book called The Rebel Prince. And when I had to read up about this, I had no idea that Tom Bower had written about the Prince of Wales. And I want to quote this, but you're going to unpack this for me. The Prince of Wales comes across in a highly negative biography as vain, cold, and out of touch. There are going to be the anti-royalists who say, oh, we kind of knew that.
Well, but I think Tom also really went really far in delving into the personality of Prince Charles. I mean, he interviewed about 120 people, but of course in the book itself he's not revealing some of their identities because he still wants to protect their identities, and some of them they're still in strong relationships with Camilla and the Prince. But I mean, it's quite a very interesting book because, I mean, there's a part where he talks about the ratings of the Prince. I mean, in 1997, there was a point where it crashed. It literally was about 14%. And that was so unprecedented.
Like an approval rating.
Exactly, like an approval rating. So it was appallingly low, simply because of the character that he has portrayed. And Gareth, I mean, he has tried so hard to portray himself as somebody who's loving, but I mean, it's quite sad to have such a scenario.
Well, it is, and it's the thing. There's this public perception of Prince Charles that he's trying to put forward, but he gets caught out. And I'm going to read just a quick line, and you can elaborate. I know you've read it. The Prince was widely mocked back in 2004. You'll know the incident I'm talking about, when he said, and I quote, "Nobody knows what utter hell it is to be the Prince of Wales." Many people, and he's still being mocked for that today, will show the complete and utter ignorance of him as a royal to the general public, because I can't imagine being the Prince of Wales is utter hell.
Well, absolutely, especially because, I mean, the privileges he's so much exposed to. And, I mean, that's a very interesting question as well, Gareth. I mean, there's a part where he had this walkabout, and a little boy just asked him out of the blue another very bizarre question, and he was so surprised. But, I mean, it also speaks to the character that he has, because, I mean, even the author states specifically that, I mean, his great-grandfather, he has sort of overtaken that record, because all the time they will say he'll become a king, he'll become the king. But, of course, the Queen is not abdicating the throne. And also there are lots of concerns about his readiness for this enormous task. The author is saying, when you look at the current Queen, she has an ability. Britain has been through so much issues and so much trouble. So she has this unique ability to unite the Britain, you know, and be able to be this force to be reckoned with. But when you look at Charles, I mean, he's seen as this dividing character. Even when Tony Blair was the Prime Minister, they had a very fractious relationship because he was so outspoken. Whereas, you know, when you're just in the royal household, it must be a ceremonial position and obviously undertake certain tasks, but not really be really critical of the government, but because you're still the head of government, as much as, of course, it's a very ceremonial role.
Reading some of the critical writing about this, many people have said that Tom Bower has come out with a negative hatchet and just has nothing positive to say about the royals at all. Is that a fair assessment based on what you've read, or does he balance it out?
I think it's a very fair assessment based on his own inclinations or whatever, you know, idea he has in mind. It's quite a very brutal and a very scathing book. But, I mean, he tries to say, I mean, he gets motivated by a number of reasons. You know, when he writes a book, there are a whole lot of things that he takes into consideration. It's influence, but also trying to understand the character of the people. So, and also with the British public, I mean, this is a character that for decades and decades they've always been exposed to. But it's so interesting also because the defiance also. So there's a point where he says, I mean, a lot of people were so against Camilla. But there was a defiance from the side of the prince, and he went ahead and got married. And also a lot of people, you know, they haven't forgiven him for the breakup that he had with Diana, the Princess Diana. So it's a very intriguing and a very unputdownable.
We're about to say goodbye to you for the moment, just in 30 seconds. Does he ever talk about wanting to be prince, wanting to be king? Does he come out and say that? Because it almost seems improper to say to your elderly mother. It's like, would you mind just moving aside? I'd really like to take your gig. It's a bit rude, but does he ever come out and say that?
I think that's another issue, Gareth. He's very reluctant. There's no point where he actually says, I really want to be a king. But also, Tom, what he really states is that he's this reluctant prince, and also there's a part where he states so succinctly and says, I mean, the hesitation. That's another part from him, so it's really hard to understand, because he is of a very inscrutable character. Whether does he really want to? But I mean, from his side, there's hesitation.
There really is. Khayelihle Khumalo, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And it's the book this morning, The Rebel Prince, The Power, Passion and Defiance of Prince Charles. It's our Khayelihle Khumalo who's gone and read the book by Tom Bauer. We're back in just a short while. In fact, a little bit later. That's because coming up after the break, if you missed this, it's a great interview. It's Under the Skin with John Perlman.